Hello everyone, my name is Zach and I make video games. For the 10-year anniversary of my first YouTube video, which I won't show here because it's awful and I hate it and needs to stay in the dead part of YouTube where it belongs, I figured I'd show off my introduction to first-person shooters and game development for said shooters. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Sauerbraten. Okay, so a few of you in the audience who actually watch these videos are probably scratching your head wondering just what in the hell Sauerbraten is. Sauerbraten is an FPS built on the Cube 2 engine, which is a free and open source Octree-based game engine built by Wouter van Oortmersen, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, as a sequel to his first FPS, Cube. If I had to describe the game, it would be Quake, but not really. The game is the classic arena shooter archetype where you can have all 7 of your weapons at once, they don't need to reload, you pick up floating ammo boxes, health, armor, no vehicles, a handful of player models, etc. There are 3 major ways to play the game: single player, bot match, and online, with a ton of maps, including some very obvious maps that were stolen. Single players are on through any of the maps in the game, with a few maps exclusive to the single player campaigns, where you pick up ammo, activate switches, and kill monsters. Not bots, monsters. For the campaign playlist, which varies slightly with each version and update of the game, you basically open a collection of monster clauses in an attempt to either kill all the enemies in the stage, or find the end of the stage. Similar to old school shooters, it's not the AI of the enemies that causes difficulty, but the sheer volume of the number of enemies. Oftentimes you find yourself in a room full of enemies that take multiple shots to kill, and when you do land a hit, they are so shocked by this fact that they stand perfectly still, waiting for you to shoot them again. Combine that with enemies that are bullet sponges, and a lot of the time you are just circle strafing and trying to find either the last enemy, the switch to open the next monster closet, or the next monster closet itself. There is an interesting history with single player maps in this game. The most recent version, Collect Edition, quote unquote, which dropped back in 2013 when I was a junior in high school, has a handful of single player maps, but an older version, namely the Assassin Edition, has slightly better graphics, better models, and way more single player maps, but was released in 2007 and can only be found by scouring the long and not updated SourceForge page. That said, all the monsters look like they came from the PS1. Textures are high res enough, but the models themselves are extremely low poly, like they look like cubes. The face of an enemy is just a flat polygon with a texture on it, which is at odds with the actual graphics, which we'll get into later, which are not very bad, I promise you. Bot matches are what you'd expect. Every single multiplayer game mode is playable with up to 32 bots. I've tried to find a way to increase the bot count, but found nothing. That said, 32 bots is a lot for some of these stages. Most are outside without item areas, but I was still getting ganged up by 3 of the enemy team bots at the same time. This brings me to an interesting factoid. Outside of free-for-all, where everyone's the same color, no matter what team you're on, the enemy team will always be red. Good team, bad team is red. Bad team, good team is red. Custom team that is just your name, all the enemy players are red. Some say this is a poor visual choice, but to me it makes a lot of sense. If they are red, shoot them. I can't count the number of times I've entered a match and had no clue who I was supposed to be shooting at, so being able to tell at a glance where to aim is a nice feature. Online is exactly what you'd expect. Either an online or LAN match where you can play with both humans and bots. It's quick and easy to connect to, and despite its age, there are still a few servers up with human players, although not as many as there used to be. Back when this was relatively new, when I was in middle school and high school, there were tons of servers that were packed to the brim with players, including the infamous Venice server. Longtime players probably remember this. It was an Instagib server that was always on Venice and always had about 100 to 120 players on it at any time. The amount of hours I spent on said server is unreal, and I would probably say that it rivals Gmod, Halo Online, and MapleStory 2 as some of the games I've played the most online of. Okay, now it's the time to deal with the issues of graphics. Graphically speaking, it looks like this really weird middle child between PS2 and PS3, with non-playable enemies looking like they came from the PS1. Enemies are detailed enough and have cool texture work and lighting. Stages are big, open, and vibrant with lovingly made static light maps. Props are well textured and detailed, and in some versions of the game, the post-processing and effects were borderline current gen. Which is weird when you consider what I played it on most as a kid, a dual-core, 1GB of RAM, 512MB graphics card running Windows XP, and I could still play the newest version of the game uncapped at max settings and get close to 200 FPS. While not perfect and by no means Crysis levels nice looking, it is still incredible just how much this game gets away with graphically with such a small GPU footprint. The biggest draw, and the reason why I bring this game up, is its level editor. All the stages in this game are made of nested octrees. Floating around the definition, it basically means that every stage was made of cubes that were modified and edited in weird ways, to the point where one can get a ridiculous level of detail without costing too terribly much when it comes to processing power. Lighting for the most part was static, but that didn't change the fact that one can make these stages look amazing without knowledge of any 3D modeling whatsoever. I remember spending hours in this mode alone, making cool maps that only I'd be able to play and just having fun. Making obstacle courses and giant robots, man. That's awesome. And the best part? The editing mode could be accessed wherever and whenever. There were online servers dedicated to just people making stuff and goofing around, and if you wanted to create a single player level, you could as you were playing it. It would break stuff, sure, but it was totally doable. You could basically press E at any time and jump into edit mode, no matter what map you were playing, no matter how many enemies were on screen. It's a shame then that this game died off the way it did. So after 10 years of continuous development, the 2013 Collect Edition is the last version of the game. It was popular for what it was, but it ultimately fell off the face of the earth. Even the Wikipedia page itself is barren when it comes to information, barely mentioning anything in regards to its forks and reimaginings. As it stands right now, Cube 2 died, and was replaced with a few forks of the codebase trying to take its place. Tesseract, which is much more homogenized but nevertheless pretty game that takes the visuals of Sauerbraten and makes them HD for the time. Project dead since 2014, no new updates since then. It plays like the Unreal 4 demo that people correctly predicted would be the next Unreal Tournament, with about half the features and 2 guns. Platinum Arc Sandbox, a game near and dear to my heart as an educational tool that my middle school used to teach us about 3D graphics. Although it is kind of in a weird place, and I'm not 100% sure if it's dead or not. It removes about 90% of the content and focuses primarily on the map creation aspect. Which is nice, sure, but gets boring after a while. And lastly, Red Eclipse, the only game still running Cube 2 that has any major player base. It does a lot of interesting things with the gameplay and is slated for release for free on Steam, which honestly makes me a bit happy inside. If there could be a sequel to Sauerbraten, this would be it. There's a lot of customization options and a parkour system with no ammo pickups and a loadout system. It's not strictly an arena shooter anymore, but more of its own thing, similar to Slipgate Arena Warfare. It's a pretty fun time, and I got to ask a lot of questions to its current player base. Special thanks to Dzik for answering some of my questions about Red Eclipse in the middle of what was supposed to be a parkour race, and special thanks again to Walter van Utermersen for making the game itself. Man, I owe you a lot for the amount of fun I had playing this back in the day, and I'm looking forward to what you make next. And that about wraps up my thoughts on this game. I had a lot of fun playing it back in the day, and although it's dead, it was fun while it lasted and is still very much playable today. So audience, do you have fond memories of Sauerbraten? Did you play it a lot back in its heyday, or are you just now discovering it? Do you think Red Eclipse can reach the same level of underground popularity its predecessor did? Leave your answers in the comments, and like the video if you want to see more in this style. I'm planning on doing a few more reviews like this, but I'm not entirely sure how they're going to turn out. Anyway, this has been Zach, and I'll see y'all next time.